Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about how to pump old gas out of an old EFI Ford. I'm not sure what model year range this information all applies to, but I'm going to guess probably the late 80s to the mid 90s, or maybe mid 80s even. Basically anything with a Ford EEC4 computer. So sippy cup's a 95, and you can do that. Same method here. The other 95 Escort that I've worked on and the 93 Escort that I've worked on were the same way. And I imagine like F-150s and stuff are all the same way too. What I will tell you is that if you're here trying to get the gas out of your gas tank because your fuel pump died, this isn't the video for you. We're actually going to pump the gas tank dry with the fuel pump. So if your fuel pump is dead, sorry man, going to have to siphon it out of there or do whatever it is you want to do. And I don't want you guys to get too excited. We're not actually working on this car. So we're going to operate in pretend land today that this is in fact the Escort because it's the exact same process. So we're not even going to talk about this thing. It's a long story for some other time. So the first step of this process is we're going to want to access our fuel pressure test port, which on this car is right down in here. Yeah, right there. So we're going to need to take that cap off and we'll need to take the valve core out of it, and I'll show you how to do that. And since this is pretend land, on the sippy cup, the fuel pressure test port is right there on the fuel rail on the passenger side of the motor. So first off, this is just a cap down here. It's just a dust cover really. So you're going to need to unscrew that. It comes off just like one on your tire does. That one's really stiff for whatever reason. We'll probably put a little drop of oil in that so it isn't quite so stiff in the future. Then you're going to need a valve core removal tool. You can get these on Amazon, you can get them at the hardware store, probably Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever. What I would suggest is get one that has a nice long reach, because a lot of them you'll buy are meant just for tires, and sometimes you need this longer tool to get in fuel rails. You just stick it in there, and it feels like it's lined up on the barbs. Those need to be aligned to the valve core. It feels like it is. And then you just unscrew it. I should have covered that before. To relieve the fuel pressure on one of these, just take a screwdriver or a small pick and just push down on that little button on it with like a rag wrapped around this, so when gas goes shooting everywhere you can catch it. This car is not run in like a year, so I was pretty confident there wasn't going to be any fuel pressure at the rail. So I neglected to do that, unless I get shot in the face with gas here in a second. And it's also important to drop that because I'm pretty sure it's aluminum, so you can't use a magnet to get it. There, that's the valve core. And when you drop that tool, you should also make sure you do everything possible to make sure it doesn't drop all the way to the floor, so you can spend the next 3 hours looking around on top of your suspension A-arms and steering rack and cross member and everything else to try and find where it went. And the most important part is to lose all hope and go get your other one out of your toolbox that you don't like nearly as well for this job. And that's the exact moment when you walk back to the car and find the one you dropped. Do you guys see it yet? You guys see it yet? You guys see it yet? Perfect. But hey, at least it is steel. So now with the most important business handled, you take a piece of 1/4-inch fuel hose or vacuum hose or anything else. It really doesn't particularly matter too much for what we're doing here because this is all just temporary. And in fact, this is 1/4-inch, I think, carburetor grade fuel hose. It's not fuel injection grade. This won't be carrying any pressure, so it doesn't matter. And you just slip one end of it over that service port. And the last time I did this, of course, this fit. So I'm sure the service port grew over the years. That's probably the problem, right? And there we go. It's on there nice and snug. And again, there's no pressure here, so you don't need to worry about putting a clamp on it or anything like that. You just take the other end of your hose and throw it in a gas can. And it's also very important to find the shortest piece of 1/4-inch hose you can so that your can can't fit on the floor while you do this and you have to put it in the engine bay. Then the next thing we're going to do is come over here to the driver's side firewall and grab our OBD1 diagnostic port. On sippy cup, this thing has a nice cover that snaps over it, and there's a bracket and stuff, and I assume this car is supposed to have that too, and it's probably just gotten broken and lost over the years. I'll have to look into that. On the sippy cup, that diagnostic connector is right here. You just pop this cover off of it and you're in. And on this guy, we're interested in this pin right here. That pin grounds the fuel pump relay, so we just need to put a jumper wire from that to a ground, and usually I just grab one of these strut grounds. It's good enough for what we're doing. And that's what that looks like. No big secret there. Next thing we're going to do is drop our negative terminal on. And it's also very, very helpful if your battery is such a piece of junk that you have to put the charger on it to get the car to do anything. either between the poor quality of modern Optima batteries, although I admit this one is quite old as well, or the fact that your alternator is putting out 15 volts. Yeah, tough to say. So now I'm going to throw the battery charger on it just so we have some voltage. Then you spend about 20 minutes looking for the keys to the car that you haven't driven in any meaningful way in about 10 years. You sit in the car for the first time in 2 years and hope you don't get a brown recluse bite. Key in ignition, bong bong bong. Let's undo that for a minute. Now when we turn the key on, since that fuel pump is grounded, it should just start running and start filling our gas can. So what I'm actually going to do is probably reach around the door jamb and do it that way. Now if this has all gone appropriately wrong, we should actually turn the key on, hear a fuel pump, and start pumping that can full of old gas. And I failed at some point along the line. I'm going to maybe think my ground isn't good enough or I've got the wrong pin. There we go. Bad ground. So that was the correct pin. Let's see if we can find something better to ground to. So now out of pure laziness, you use your multimeter just as a set of jumper cables and put it in the amperage setting and hook one end of your wire to one of the connectors on the multimeter and the other end to the negative on the battery. Again, out of pure laziness because I don't have a jumper long enough just to do that. So this will work. And now we try it again. Much better result this time. You also want to be sure you actually have enough room in your gas can for this. This can's totally empty, and I think this car only has about a gallon or maybe 2 of gas in it. He's coming on out. So I'm just going to keep an eye on this, especially as stupidly as this is all set up, and make sure nothing bad happens, and we'll catch back up when it's done. Hopefully with no fireballs. Just to prove I'm not lying to you, we are in fact flowing gasoline. The fuel pump in this car is pretty loud anyway. It could probably use a replacement, but you can actually hear when the pump starts struggling for gas. Like right now. Time to shut the key off. As predicted, we got, maybe a half gallon of gas out of it. Right there's the line on the can. So nothing too bad, but that stuff's been in there for 2 years. It was time to go. Anytime I have any fuel line or a siphon tube or anything like that that just had gas in it, I always just chuck it outside for the following day and just let that all evaporate. I don't need that hanging out in the garage. It'll be fine out here. No worries. Got the battery charger and all that stuff off the car as quickly as I could because we don't want fuel and sparks mixing. And then this really is one of those deals where installation is exactly reverse of removal, which hopefully means we'll drop even more stuff and spend like the whole weekend just digging around the shop trying to find what we dropped. Also bump the camera. Hope you get everything out of focus when you do. Take our tool and just be gentle when you put these back in. You don't want to cross thread them. Usually they're pretty nice about things. Feels like that one just took thread right away. Nice and tight. You don't want to go crazy, but tight. And for our final trick, I just took this cap and just dribbled a little bit of oil down in it because it was so stiff coming off for some reason. And this cap is just a dust cap, but it should still be fuel inert. My gut feeling is it should be. Whether or not it is another question. Also important to put the camera exactly where it can see and you can't. It looks like maybe it was stiff because this AC line's kind of rubbing it. No, it's just kind of stiff. And there we go. And that is how you pump bad gas or old gas out of an Escort or an F-150 or a Ranger, but certainly never a Mustang because we don't work on those on this channel. And you guys may be wondering what I'm going to do with the gas I just pumped out of it. This gas over here I bought probably around September-ish, so just like 3 or 4 months ago for mowing the grass. But all the same, it's just going to basically sit around, or I might use a little bit in the snow thrower if I were to keep it. It's just going to sit around forever and just keep getting older. But it isn't that old. That gas is still plenty fresh. The gas that came out of this car is almost 2 years to the day, like I'm a couple days past 2 years old. But it still smells fine. It's not discolored. It's not the freshest stuff in the world, and there's only about a half gallon left of it. I think there's about a half gallon or a gallon of space in that can. So what I'm going to do is pour this gas in that can with the much fresher gas, and then as I'm driving the sippy cup, when it gets down a few gallons on gas, right now it's got a brand new full tank of gas because I'm stupid and didn't think this through very well. But when it gets down a few gallons on gas, I'll probably put about half of that can in it and dilute it out with fresh gas and then run that tank dry, and then I'll do the same thing another time. So I'll burn this, let's say 3 or 4 quarts of old gas up by a dilution factor of about 100 to 1, and it'll burn just fine. I've been doing this for years. If you have gas that's super old and nasty, like you're working on an old tractor or something, the gas that's in it is rusty and smells terrible and everything else, don't try and burn it. The gas in the Blazer smells like total crap, and I'm probably not going to try this trick there. What I'm going to have to do in that case is take it down to like the local Toxaway day, or if you just do a boatload of oil changes, you can get rid of it like a half a quart to probably a couple gallons of oil, and the parts store won't say much to you. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do with this gas. I'm going to pour it in there to dilute it with fresh, and then that fresh dilution is going to get diluted again in the Escort. And as a final note, whenever you take one of those Schrader valves out of a fuel rail, especially on an older car like this, it's a good idea to just put a brand new one in. A lot of guys will just get the ones that are rated for air conditioning because they're oil resistant O-rings on them and put them in. And I believe those guys, that probably works just fine. What you absolutely don't want to do is use these that are made for tires. These are not oil resistant. These are just for tire valve stems. You don't use these for fuel or for air conditioning. You will have a fuel leak sooner or later if you use the wrong valve stems. To that end, if you guys know me well at all by now, you know that I'm a bit of a worrywart. So what I like to do is buy these GM part numbers, and you'll see right there 905 4265 is the part number you're looking for. These are for LS-based motors, and these are GM part numbered fuel line replacement valve stem cores. So these are specifically sold as gasoline compliant or gasoline capable. And you might be able to order these specifically from, I don't know, Audi or Mercedes-Benz or maybe even Ford, I don't know. But the GM part number is the easy one to find. I bought these on Amazon. You can see I stocked up. I stack them cheap and sell them deep with stuff like this because I don't like the idea of my cars burning down. So you can probably use an AC valve core and it'll be just fine. I like using these because these are actually called out by GM for fuel. And I'm not the biggest GM fan in the world, but I think they know the difference between gasoline and air. I'll trust them that far. That joke aside, however, these things are not cheap. I think these are like $3 or $4 each. You might be able to get a better deal at a GM dealer or something. I don't know. Like I said, I got these on Amazon. I did not put one of these in the car, the Ford which shall not be named over here, because the car's just going to sit here. It's not going anywhere. There's a long story. You guys know that we do story time when we introduce new projects. We're not even close to being there yet with this thing. So this car is going to be sitting for quite a while. It is not going to be transportation in any reasonable sense of the word. So if it dribbles a little bit of fuel, I'm going to be standing right here, right next to it anytime it's running, and I'll know that and I'll shut the car down. Another thing, I always take stuff like this and label it what it's for, because 10 years from now when I open my toolbox up, I'm not going to remember what this part number is for. And I don't want to go putting these $3, $4 a piece things in tires and crap like that. Food for thought. Till next time, guys, thanks for stopping in. Really appreciate it. Now you guys know I wouldn't do you like that. Get ready for the best sounding 199 horsepower on YouTube. First cold start in about 9 months. Told you it sounds good. I'm Max, that's Saddington Bear, and we make videos like this all the time. Here are a couple links to some other videos we've made, and we really appreciate you guys stopping in.